I never thought anything strange about staying late at work. As the newest hire at a boutique marketing agency in Seattle, I was eager to impress. That meant overtime, last-minute edits, and yes, occasionally fetching double-shot macchiatos for my boss, Daniel. Daniel was intense, not in a bad way. He was just the kind of guy who had presence. Clean cut, mid-30s, always crisp in a button-down shirt that hugged his frame just right. Straight, obviously. He had a fiancée once. I'd heard through office gossip, but they broke it off a couple years ago. Since then, he kept things professional. Strict boundaries. Friendly, but distant. Still, I couldn't help the way I noticed things. The way he'd roll up his sleeves during a pitch meeting. The way he'd bite his lip when reading over a campaign proposal. The way he smelled like cedar and black pepper cologne when he walked past my desk. Harmless crush. Completely unrequited. So when he leaned over my cubicle at 6:40 on a Friday evening and asked, "You doing anything tonight?" I blinked at him like he'd spoken in code. No, I replied, fingers still hovering over my keyboard. I've got a few samples from a liquor client we're pitching next week. I need to test them out before I can confidently sell the concept. Thought it'd be good to get a second opinion. You game? My throat went dry. Sure, I said, trying to sound normal. You want me to stay late and go through them here? Daniel smiled, that rare kind of smile that made my stomach flutter. Nah. Let's do it somewhere less fluorescent. My place okay? That was the moment my brain short-circuited. I nodded like a functional human being. Yeah, cool. That works. The next 30 minutes were a blur of me powering down my computer and trying not to spiral into 20 different interpretations of what going to your straight boss's house after hours meant. Maybe nothing. Probably nothing. We walked to the parking garage together. He drove a dark gray Audi, clean inside, smelled like leather and the same cologne he wore. The drive was filled with low music and small talk about a campaign launch and how the client might be a nightmare. I tried not to overanalyze everything he said. Or how his arm flexed when he shifted gears. Or how his knee occasionally bumped mine when we hit a red light. His place was a condo on the 5th floor of a modern building overlooking Capitol Hill. Clean lines. Industrial wood. A view of the skyline through huge floor-to-ceiling windows. Everything about it screamed understated wealth. Make yourself at home, he said, tossing his keys in a bowl by the door. You want to start with whiskey or mezcal? I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. Dealer's choice, he laughed and headed to the kitchen. I sat on the leather sectional, trying to act cool while discreetly scanning the room. No signs of a girlfriend or a boyfriend. No framed couple photos. Just minimalist art, a sleek TV, and a few well-worn novels on the coffee table. He came back with 2 glasses and a bottle of something smoky. To late nights and hard work, he said, clinking his glass against mine. We drank. The mezcal was strong, so was the silence that followed our second round. So he said eventually, sitting a little closer than before, be honest, do you actually enjoy working here? Or is it just a resume builder until something better comes along? His tone was casual, but his eyes were fixed on me in that laser-focused way of his. I swallowed hard. I actually do like it. I mean, yeah, it's intense sometimes, but I like the challenge. He nodded slowly, considering that. You're good. Better than I expected, honestly. Thanks, I said, then added. Wait, what did you expect? He smirked. A kid who'd need babysitting. Ouch. Another drink. The edge of his knee brushed mine again. He didn't move it this time. Neither did I. Do people ever make assumptions about you? He asked suddenly. I blinked. What do you mean? You know based on how you look. Or act. Sure. I guess. I mean, people usually assume I'm gay before I even open my mouth. He gave a small laugh. You don't hide it very well. I laughed too, nerves buzzing. I don't try to. Then he went quiet again. When I looked at him, his expression had changed. less amused, more searching. "Does that bother you?" I asked. "What?" "That I'm gay." He shook his head. "No, not at all." "Okay." Another pause. Then he said, "You ever wonder why someone would invite you over like this?" My heart stopped for a second. Yeah. Kind of wondering that now, actually. He looked at me. Really looked at me. And then he said something I'll never forget. "I'm not sure what I'm doing," he admitted quietly. "But I don't want you to leave yet." I didn't say anything at first. I mean, what do you say when your boss, your straight boss, looks at you with something like vulnerability in his eyes and says he doesn't want you to leave? My mind scrambled for logic, for context, for any reason why I should stand up, laugh this off, and say, "Cool, man, see you Monday," but I didn't move. I stayed rooted on that couch, knees still touching. "I didn't mean to make it weird," Daniel added quickly, pulling back slightly. "You've just been on my mind lately." His voice was lower now, rougher. My pulse was in my ears. "Daniel," I began, not sure where I was going with it. I know," he cut in, eyes flicking away. "You don't have to say anything. I've probably had too much to drink." But I wasn't sure that was true. I wasn't drunk, I was buzzed, sure, but I knew what I was seeing. The tension wasn't just in my head. It had been simmering beneath the surface for weeks. The late nights, the way he'd linger behind me when I worked through lunch, the subtle glances that, until now, I'd convinced myself were nothing. He started to get up, maybe to diffuse it, maybe to pretend it never happened. But I reached out, my fingers brushing his forearm, stopping him. "Wait," I said. He froze. "You're not imagining this," I said, surprised at my own voice. "It's been there. I felt it too." He slowly sat back down. Now our knees were fully touching. Still, no one moved. His hand was still near mine on the couch cushion, and I could feel the electricity pulsing between our skin. "I don't know what this means," he said. "I've never done anything like this before." "I have," I said gently, "but that doesn't make this any less confusing." He exhaled through his nose. "You're my employee," I nodded, "and you're my boss." We both knew the implications. But there was something else, something unspoken between us, that neither professionalism nor logic could smother in that moment. I keep thinking about you," he said finally, barely above a whisper. "At work, at home, when I'm out with friends. It's like I can't turn it off." My throat went dry. I didn't expect this much honesty. Not from him. "I don't know what I want right now," he continued, "but I know I don't want you to leave tonight." A long pause. Then I said, "Okay, I'll stay." He looked at me again. Really looked. "Come with me," he said, standing up and offering his hand. I didn't hesitate. He led me down the hallway, past the framed art and minimalist furniture, until we reached his bedroom. It was large, but not cold. The bed was unmade, a book face down on the nightstand, a half-empty glass of water beside it. Human. Lived in. "I didn't plan any of this," he said, his voice almost nervous. "I believe you," I said. He stepped closer. I could see the uncertainty in his face, mixed with something else. What? Curiosity, restraint on the verge of breaking. And when he finally kissed me, it wasn't clumsy or unsure. It was soft, tentative, like a man opening a door he wasn't sure he'd ever walk through. His lips were warm, slightly hesitant at first, like he wasn't sure how far he could go, but I could feel him leaning in, letting the moment guide him. I kissed him back, slow, steady. Not pushing, not rushing, just being there with him. He pulled back slightly, his breath brushing against my cheek. "I can't believe I'm doing this," he whispered. "Do you want to stop?" I asked. He shook his head. "I don't know what I want, I don't want to pretend anymore." His hand found the back of my neck, gently pulling me in again. This time the kiss deepened, more confident now, his fingers threading into my hair. My hands rested on his chest, feeling the rise and fall of his breathing, the slight tremble beneath his skin. He broke the kiss again, forehead resting against mine. "I've thought about this," he admitted. "Not like this, not exactly, but it's been there. How long? A while, he said. I think I kept trying to rationalize it. Tell myself it was just admiration. Or loneliness. Is it? I don't know, he said, his voice barely above a breath. But right now, I just want you here. I nodded. The air between us changed then. Not just charged, but calm. Like the tension had found its release, and now something quieter, more deliberate, had taken its place. He ran a hand down my back as we stood in his bedroom, the soft hum of the city outside his window filtering in like white noise. It felt strangely intimate, safe even. We didn't rush it. He pulled off his shirt, slow and uncertain, watching my reaction. I stepped closer, pressing my palms gently to his chest, tracing the line of muscle down to his stomach. His skin was warm under my touch, his breath hitching as I moved. And then we were on the bed, side by side, still fully clothed from the waist down, just touching, exploring, breathing, existing in this strange new space we'd created, between lines, between rules. Is this going to ruin everything? He asked softly, his eyes locked with mine in the dim room. I don't think so, I said. Not if we're honest. He let out a shaky laugh. Honest, that's new for me. I could feel his vulnerability, the uncertainty of someone who's always had control, now letting go of it. Just a little. And so, that night, we didn't cross every line, we didn't take off all our clothes, we didn't pretend this was something casual. We kissed, we talked, we touched, and paused, and looked at each other like we were discovering something neither of us had been brave enough to say out loud. And somewhere between the touches and the silences, I realized something. Whatever this was, it wasn't a one-night thing. I woke up before him. The light was barely spilling through the curtains, and for a second, I forgot where I was. Then I looked over and saw Daniel, shirtless, arm draped across the pillow between us, face relaxed in a way I'd never seen before. He looked peaceful. It hit me then. This wasn't some fantasy I'd cooked up. It wasn't a dream. We'd crossed a line together, and somehow it didn't feel like a mistake. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, trying to think what Monday morning would look like. Office small talk, emails, meetings, and whatever this was. I wasn't sure what I expected when I followed him to his bedroom last night, but it definitely wasn't to feel this calm the next morning. When Daniel finally stirred, his eyes opened slowly, blinking away sleep before they settled on me. Hey, he said, voice hoarse. Morning. He rubbed his face. Did we? He started, then shook his head. No, never mind. We didn't go all the way, I said, watching him carefully. But we definitely crossed into something. He let out a breath, sitting up slightly. I don't regret it, but I don't know what it means, I nodded. Me either. There was a long pause. I've got a lot to figure out, he said. About myself. About how we work together now. About everything. Yeah? I just don't want to pretend it didn't happen. That surprised me. You don't? I asked. He looked at me then, really looked. I've been pretending about a lot of things for a long time. Maybe it's time I stop. That silence settled again. But it was different this time. Not heavy, not loaded. Just real. We got dressed in quiet. No awkwardness, no cold shoulder. Just two people trying to make sense of something new. He offered me coffee. I took it. We didn't say much else. When I finally left, he stood at the door, one hand on the frame. See you Monday? Yeah, I said, see ya. That Monday walking into the office felt surreal. He was already at his desk, sleeves rolled up, phone pressed to his ear. For a split second, it felt like nothing had changed. Then our eyes met across the room. He gave me the faintest nod, a small, quiet acknowledgement that what happened wasn't erased, and somehow that was enough. For now, a week passed. Daniel and I didn't talk about that night again, not directly. But something had shifted. At work, we acted like everything was the same. But between the lines, in the way his eyes lingered when I made a joke, or how he brushed past me when there was plenty of space, it was clear we hadn't just moved on. One Thursday afternoon, I stayed late working on a presentation. Everyone else had gone home. I didn't think he was still there until I heard the familiar sound of his steps behind me. "You always stay this late?" he asked, standing in the doorway. I looked up from my screen. "Only when the deck's a mess, and I need to prove I'm not just here for the coffee." Daniel smiled faintly and stepped inside, closing the door. He leaned against the edge of my desk. "You free tomorrow night?" I blinked. Yeah, I think so. There's a gallery opening in Belltown. Client stuff. You don't have to go. But if you're interested, it might be nice." I hesitated. "Nice? Like a work thing?" He looked down for a second. "I don't know what it is, but I want to spend more time with you, away from all this." The honesty in his voice stunned me. He wasn't pretending anymore. He wasn't even trying to hide how he felt. "Okay," I said. "I'll go." He looked up at me, and something in his shoulders relaxed. "I'm still figuring this out," he said. "But I'm not confused about wanting to be around you." That was the first time he admitted anything so plainly. "You don't need to have all the answers," I said. "You just have to be real with me." He gave a small nod. "That I can do." The gallery was exactly the kind of place I imagined Daniel thrived in. Minimalist lighting, expensive wine, curated crowd. But he didn't seem like the version of himself I saw at client meetings. He stuck close to me, introduced me to a few people casually, and never once acted like I didn't belong at his side. Later, we stood near the exit, sipping wine and looking out at the city through floor-to-ceiling windows. "I keep thinking this is going to crash and burn," he said quietly. "That I'm going to wake up one day and freak out. But every time I'm with you, it just feels simple." "It doesn't have to be complicated," I said. He looked over at me, then slowly reached out, his fingers brushing mine. "Okay," he said. "Let's not make it complicated." So we didn't. We left the gallery and walked through the city without saying much, just feeling the quiet kind of connection that didn't need to be named yet. Not boyfriend, not dating, not anything else. Just something real, something new. We didn't define it. For the next few weeks, whatever Daniel and I were doing existed in this strange, unspoken space. Some nights we'd text, sometimes we'd get dinner, and twice I ended up back at his condo. Never for long, and never going further than kissing and touching. Each time, we stopped before it could escalate. It wasn't about hesitation anymore. It was about control. Daniel was trying to understand himself, and I respected that. But it didn't stop the way my heart twisted every time I left his place without knowing what came next. At the office, we kept our distance, professionally at least. But there were moments, quiet ones, like the way he'd glance up when I entered a room, or how he'd linger near my desk after meetings, pretending to be interested in a report we both knew didn't matter. "You free tonight?" he'd ask casually. And I always was. One evening we were sprawled on his couch, his head resting lightly on my shoulder, as we watched a movie neither of us was really paying attention to. "I've been thinking," he murmured. "About? Coming out." That got my attention. I looked at him. "Are you sure?" "No," he admitted, "but I'm tired of living like everything's fine when it isn't." I waited. "I'm not saying I'm ready to shout it from the rooftop," he continued. "But I want to stop pretending that who I'm drawn to is some fluke." My hand found his. "I'm here, Daniel," I said, "whether you're out, figuring it out, or somewhere in between." He looked at me then, not with confusion, not with fear, with gratitude. And something else, something I was afraid to name. Affection. That night, I stayed over. We didn't do anything physical. We didn't need to. We curled into each other, quiet, grounded, and comfortable in a way that felt intimate without being heavy. His breathing slowed as he drifted off with his face pressed to my neck, and I just held him, wondering how we'd gotten here from a work project and a glass of mezcal. Whatever this was, it wasn't nothing. It was becoming something. It wasn't all easy. After that night at Daniel's place, after we'd slept, wrapped around each other like something worth protecting, the next morning felt heavier. He was quieter. Not cold, just distant, like the weight of everything he was feeling had followed him into the daylight. I didn't push. I got dressed in silence, made us coffee, and sat on the edge of the bed while he stared out the window. "You okay?" I asked. He nodded, eyes still distant. "Yeah, just thinking." "About us?" He didn't answer right away. "I want this," he said finally. "I just don't know how to want it out loud." I understood. His world, his professional image, his identity, his control, was built on something steady and defined. I was the curve in that road, the unplanned detour. But he wasn't turning away. That night didn't break us. Over the next month, we found our rhythm. Not a relationship, not yet, but something close. We saw each other once or twice a week outside work, more often for lunch or coffee. Sometimes we'd kiss. Sometimes we'd just talk. Sometimes he'd invite me over, and we'd lie there for hours, not needing anything else but the space between us. Still, there was a boundary neither of us had crossed. Until the night we finally did. It was a Friday. A long week, brutal deadlines, and a client who nearly scrapped an entire campaign in the 11th hour. Daniel looked exhausted when I walked into his condo that night. He didn't say much, just pulled me into a hug that lasted longer than usual. When we finally pulled apart, his forehead rested against mine. "I need you tonight," he said softly. "Not just to talk." There was no nervousness in his voice this time, no apology, just need and want and something deeper. We didn't rush, we moved slowly. He kissed me like he'd been waiting, like every hesitation was gone. His hands roamed over me like he finally felt permission to explore what he'd been denying. That night, we didn't stop. And when it was over, when our bodies were slick with sweat and our chests pressed tight, I looked at him and saw something I hadn't seen before. Peace. Maybe even happiness. He cupped my face gently and whispered, "I've never felt like this with anyone." I believed him. And for the first time, I let myself hope this could be more than a hidden thing. After that night, something settled between us. It wasn't just physical. It was emotional. Like we'd finally stopped orbiting around what we both wanted and just let ourselves land. The next Monday, Daniel brought me coffee at my desk. It was early. The office was still quiet. He placed it beside my keyboard and didn't say a word. But his hand brushed mine, just briefly, and that was enough. My heart thudded, but I didn't look up. I didn't need to. That tiny moment said everything. Later that week, he pulled me into a meeting room and closed the door. "I've been thinking," he said, "about us." My stomach twisted. "I don't want to keep this in the dark," he continued, "but I also don't want to risk your job, or mine, and I sure as hell don't want this to feel like some office affair." I nodded. "I've thought about that too." He paced once, then stopped. "So, maybe it's time to make some changes." "Changes?" "I'm stepping back from day-to-day project oversight. I'll stay on as creative director, but I'm promoting someone else to handle team management." I stared at him. "Wait, me?" He laughed softly. "Not yet, but you're close." I blinked. "You're doing this because of me?" "I'm doing it because I want this to be real," he said. "And I can't do that if I'm technically your boss." The words hit me harder than I expected. Because this wasn't some half-step. This was a man rearranging his life to make room for me. We kept it quiet at work, but not secret. Daniel started introducing me to friends. Casual hangouts, low-key dinners, no labels. But the way he watched me, the way he smiled when I spoke, made it clear. I wasn't just some guy he was seeing. I was the guy. And when he finally came out to his sister, I was there, sitting beside him on his couch, our hands tangled in a quiet knot. "I'm seeing someone," he'd said into the phone. "It's a guy. His name's—" I squeezed his hand gently. "It's okay," I mouthed. And he said it. Said my name like it was something he was proud to say. Some people were surprised. Some weren't. And yeah, some raised eyebrows when the office got wind that Daniel had stepped back and I was being promoted. But it didn't matter. Not anymore. Because this wasn't about some fantasy or a blurred night on a couch. This was real. Messy, brave, ours.